Hello, and welcome to Domain Talk with Todd and Josh. This is Todd Ryan. I'm going to jump on X right now where we broadcast this live so I can hook up with my friend and colleague, domain investor Josh Reason, and we'll get this show started. See, Josh has got it rolling. Here we go. Yo, hey Josh.
What's up, Todd? Can you hear me?
Yeah, sound good. And I streaming this on YouTube too. And I always do you can't hear me because I'm like, I wait till you open this room up and I let everybody know. I don't know. Josh has got these 35,000 followers. Who's following you? I want to know
Hello.
who in the fuck is following you. But anyway, so I always, if you listen to YouTube, you'll hear me say, hello, welcome to Domain Talk
All
with
right,
Todd and
John can hear
Josh.
me.
And I'm Todd Ryan, and I'm going to join my friend and colleague
Good
Josh Reason.
news.
I say all this bullshit before I come on here. And then, so
I'll
anyway,
just wait for Todd.
yeah.
I'll just wait for Todd to get on and then we'll get started. Wait for this room to fill up anyway. Apparently, we got 80 people that are going to come. We'll see.
Hey Josh, sorry I was on mute there, and I
All good,
was
dude.
talking. Yeah, wasn't looking at my screen. I wanted to say, I stream this on YouTube. I've been trying, just so, and I do an intro before I even come in here. It's telling you. Let's see. Always say something like, and on YouTube they're going to hear it twice because the way I'm recording. Anyway, I always say, hey, it's Domain Talk. It's going to start. I'm going to jump on this space with Josh right now, and then I jump on, and then of course you start hearing me. But anyway, I was saying Josh starts the space because he's got 35,000 followers. Who's following you? I don't know all these people that are following you. Why are they following you? What do they think you're
Nah, there's
doing?
probably like 10. So I had another Twitter account as well, and I had about 10 to 11,000 followers, and they were all from like the domain world. And then I inherited another account that had a bunch of followers already. So I would probably say like 10,000 of those followers are from like the domain world, and 20,000 are just random kind of entrepreneurial people that don't have a clue who I am or really care.
Yeah, well, listen, I wanted to tell you, first of all, I'm enjoying doing these spaces, and we haven't come up with, like we're going to do it weekly. Josh and I are just enjoying ourselves. Maybe we'll come up with a designated time. This is probably a pretty good one, 10 a.m. for me on Wednesday, 1 p.m. for Josh. I was going to ask him about what's happening, pickleball life and his family. And we're going to, listen, we got a ton of domain bullshit to talk about. First, I want to say, Josh, and thanks for letting me sort of, you're like, I'm like fucking driving Miss Daisy. You're like in the back, and I'm like, okay, so he's letting me drive the stupid fucking car. But anyway, I want to say hey to Arif.
I want you to drive the car, dude. I don't want to drive the
Yeah,
car. I
no,
just
I
want to
know.
be
You're
in.
like, hey, and pull over here. But I wanted to say hey to Arif real fast because today is open. We wanted to have an open conversation. So I want to thank Arif for even coming up here. He's not shy. But hey, Arif, what's happening? How you doing today?
Hey, I don't even know I don't even know how that happened. Join a speaker, but yeah, hey guys, yeah, you guys are really. I like this new dynamic you guys have. It's good to have. Well, you Todd, but also I think Josh is one of the most. Well, he's a smart guy, but also he does the work, right? So you combine those two things together. It's probably one of the most wise people in this industry to listen to and to take advice from. So yeah, thanks for you guys doing the room.
Thanks, brother. I miss the chats that we used to have during COVID. We used to get on calls quite a lot then, didn't we?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, a lot of good times, and but yeah, I'm trying to get back into things a bit. I won't get into too much, but you guys know I have some family stuff, but it's coming to an end, like for paperwork stuff. So in about 6 weeks, I'll be having a lot more time and energy. I'm going to try and start up some more stuff. But hey, you guys are doing this stuff, so I'm really happy to kick back and get information from you guys because it's Josh. I mean, really, you're really good voice for this industry, and oftentimes when I hear things happen, I'm frustrated. Like, don't say this, don't say that to other people. You're the voice of reason that comes and straightens things out. So I'm appreciative to you guys for doing that.
Yeah, dude, I try. I mean, I don't want to overstep or say anything that I shouldn't say like a lot of the time. But at the end of the day, I just you know state my opinion. If you agree with it, you agree with it, and if you don't, that's cool as well. It doesn't change my doesn't change my affection for you as a person. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's a tough. The industry is kind of tough because there's a lot of people have different opinions and different things. And the good thing about this industry is that there's so many ways to make money in it, right? Just the problem is that there's so many more to lose money, and a lot of people go down those paths. But it's good to have information here. So I'm here to listen,
Yeah,
and
I mean,
everybody wants.
people don't need to agree on everything to get on, right? And I think that's the key to all of this. It's like you don't have to agree with everything I say. In fact, some stuff that I say can annoy you, but we can still get on and have cordial conversation. That's
Yeah, yeah.
that's the key.
Well,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of people who just don't like to absorb the information in a way that because many people come to this industry and they have a certain thing in mind and they think, oh, it's easy to sell 1%, and it's not, and it's, people don't realize. They go, oh, you only sell 1% of your domains a year? I can do that, and it's most people can't.
Demanding is hard. Demanding is hard. Anyway, should we get started, Todd?
yeah,
What do
yeah.
we got on the
Matter of
agenda?
fact, we are going to touch on sell-through rate, and we are going to touch on this domain fair market value. John, who's in the audience, and hope he joins us, was saying he differs from you a lot on this fair market value. But before we get into it, I want to say first, I agree with Arif. The value you bring, Josh, and that's why I wanted to, when you said, hey, should we do a little something here? Well, yeah, some other folks have said, like to do rooms, but I think who's really going to add value? So I agree with Arif that we know you can add value, Josh, and I mean it's fucking great that you're like basically out there in the field, but also up in the control tower in the domain space. So that's why I have tons of questions and topics to go over with you. The other day, you were mentioning, and we'll just get rolling about fair market value, and then we'll sort of segue into the sell-through rate because you talked about this a lot in the past week. Fair market value, you mentioned that, well, quickly you said, hey, a fair market value is what can you liquidate this name for in 24 hours to have at least two buyers. And I think that was, a good specific way to explain it so people could understand it. But there's a lot of, like it was a nuances to it, and that's not exactly, always a fair market value. But explain a little bit, and then I hope John comes up here and gives his counterpoint at what he believes is a domain fair market value. But explain again, Josh, what you believe is fair market value for domain names.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, bring John up. Excited to discuss this with him, and I'll try to articulate in the best way I can. I'm not always the best at articulating, and I'll say that summarizing this subject in a tweet or an X post, whatever you want to call it, is damn near impossible, man. It's there, like you say, there's so many nuances to it. Uh, you know, I actually think that while John may disagree with me, I think that there's probably a lot more common ground than what maybe he thinks. Um, and first and foremost, when I'm talking about fair market value, there's only one real market, if you like, of in the sense of uh, more like a more traditional market that we would think of in other assets, and that is what is often described as what the wholesale market, right? Um, and when I think of the wholesale market, I think about what all of us collectively as domain investors are trading domains for. I think about expired auctions. I think about drops, and I think about investor to investor transactions. Um, and that's how we all acquire our names. And I think that is what the market represents. And I would say that we are the people trying to acquire names at fair market value. And I think that that's an important thing, first of all, for me to preface, because um, when you go out and you want a specific domain name, um, I think it would be absurd to think that you can acquire that name for fair market value. Absolutely absurd. Um, you know, if I started a business tomorrow, um, and I wanted to call that business Orange or whatever, and I wanted to get orange.com, I most likely wouldn't be able to get it at all for any price. Forget fair market value, whatever that might be. The market, when I'm an end user going to um, purchase a domain, I'm purchasing it, and this is where John and I are probably going to agree on a lot of things. Is that I'm purchasing it for a wide variety of different reasons. Uh, and most of those reasons are not relevant to the raw asset itself, in this case, the domain. They're relevant to the business that you're trying to build, have built, or building. And what you're doing with the domain name represents more of the value than the raw asset itself in that particular situation. So like let's start there, and then we can kind of expand.
Okay, before you say something, John, welcome to the stage. John's a businessman and a domain investor. He's been doing it for 10 years. Just give a little background on John. Studies more than anyone I know. I mean, basically to learn about the business. And John, you name drop a lot of the fucking top guys. I mean, all the time. I mean, you've really done your research, and I love that you were even bringing up TLD Investors the other day, who runs that site, Raymond. Um, Basically, you've, from DN Journal to listening to Mike Mann, you've really purchasing things from Mike Mann. You've really done your homework. So I consider you, I mean, basically, real savvy, very far along in your domain investing journey with your 10 years experience is equivalent to anybody else's 20 years. Okay, before I get to you, John, is what Josh said about investor to investor is, you know, we do a lot of that here in this space. Basically, well, I guess I comparing it to real estate. When you're selling real estate investor to investor, there is a difference there than with what's considered fair market value. But domain names aren't real estate, even though they are compared to it a lot. John, tell us, how do you come up with the domain fair market value? That's well, really, just how do you come up with your fair market value for domain names?
Well, thanks for having me on, gentlemen. I will start with the fact that in that exchange with Josh, I think that him and I disagree on fair market value because he applies it the same way that you would with any traditional asset. And I understand the urge to do that because I'm a domainer like everyone else in this space, and I want to do that. But every day I learn more and more how wrong I am about that, because on any given day of the week, we know the price of gold. Like today, an ounce of gold you can buy it for $3,500. I can go on Zillow, punch in my zip code, and I can pretty much, in a very, very small margin of error, know what a 5-bedroom, 2-story home costs. And the same could be said about if I want to go buy a share of Tesla stock before market close today. I always know what that price is because of the regulated market, the clearinghouses, and the numerous exchanges that back it. Domain names are not like that. So I felt that when Josh made that post, he had the right definition, but he put the wrong one first. When he used the term liquid value, I totally get that. He's right about that. But when you say fair market value, that's where I disagree with him on. Because there is no fair market value on domains in that way. But there is a liquid value and there's definitely a wholesale value. But often when we're selling domains, even when I've sold domains on Bin, I've been tricked out of domains before by savvy buyers where I sold a domain for like 10K on Bin, right? And I always go back and check, okay, 30 days later, who's using this domain? You know the shock on your face when you sell a domain for $10,000 and find out you just sold it to someone that just raised $50 million and that they're announcing all over the news, hey, I just raised $50 million on Business Wire, Newswire. What was really the fair market value? Was it really 10,000 or was it just my ignorance of the true value? So for me, I just don't think that fair market value applies. And I've created my own term that you and I talked about yesterday, totally made it up, called domain market value, because I believe that domains are that unique that it needs its own. We already have a lot of terminology that only domainers know. And I think that we have to continue coming up with our own terminology because this is still an immature industry, in my opinion. But I say domain market value as in an estimated price a domain name would sell for on a given day based on all relevant metrics on that day by the seller, price to sell to the most deep-pocketed known buyers. That's how I define it.
Okay, Josh.
Okay, that's cool.
yeah.
No. I again, like, I don't think we really disagree on anything other than me calling it fair market value as opposed to domain market value, or what have you. I think that the reason why in this case I'm referring to it as fair market value is because that's often a term that is used for a wide variety of assets outside of gold or stocks or whatever. You can talk about a piece of machinery, a tractor, a truck. When a lease comes to an end, there's a fair market value, and that can, that's it's not an exact number. It's often a range, and I think that um, you see something similar in the like you say, the liquid market or the wholesale market. For me, those are the same things, and I box those in with fair market value. In terms of calling it something else, absolutely no problem. But I think that outside of the industry, most people would kind of relate with fair market value. I think one of the reasons why establishing values is very important is for the advancement of domains as an asset class. And the difficulty is, and this is why I try to stay away from retail valuation. Like, John's talking a lot about, what a domain sells for to an end user. And, I'll be as blunt as I possibly can with this. What a domain sells for to the end user is like 99% about the seller and the buyer, and 1% about like the domain itself in most cases. That might be a slight exaggeration, but it's so circumstantial, and it's so much of what a domain trades for to an end user is not about the domain itself. Yeah, if you've got a great domain name, you're going to value it higher. But at the end of the day, these end user valuations are just numbers that we're for lack of a better term pulling out of our ass. It's not a it's you cannot put it down to a science. And some of these tools are getting quite good at providing ranges of what you should maybe look to price your domains at on the retail side of things. And a lot of these ranges come from comparable sales that have happened in the past. They might come from the industry that it's targeting. Might come from the number of end users that are out there and how much money they've raised. There are a whole variety of things. But yeah, I mean, like I kind of said, these the range is gigantic. I mean, you could see one week you could see a really good oneword.com that appeals to a really big market sell for 250K, and the next week a similar oneword.com with similar end user statistics could sell for 3 million. Yeah, it could be could represent a different market. Obviously every domain is unique, but at the end of the day, it's very dependent, like I said, on the buyer and the seller. I would say mostly the seller, because they get to choose when they want to release that asset and for how much. So I think that for me, when I'm thinking about valuing domains, um, I'm thinking about the value that the market makers place on the domains, and we, as domain investors, people that invest in domains and sell domains for a living, are the market makers, and we are able to, you know, um, we are able to put a value range on a lot of these domains and try to acquire them within that range. And oftentimes we're then looking for many multiples of that range when selling at a retail price tag. Um, so yeah, I think that it's a long-winded way of me saying that you know I agree with John. It's just selling these domains uh, at end user prices. Nobody nobody has a formula that can accurately um, value what that kind of transaction will or should look like.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, Josh. I mean, that's well said. And that's one thing that people often don't realize is that there's a large element to domaining that is really out of our control, right? And you can call it luck, but with volume, law of averages kind of kicks in a little bit. But at the same time, the end, we have no control over which end user is coming to buy our domains, and as such, it's like really the value of the domain, the perceived value by the potential buyer, really depends on what their vision for their business is, right? And if you go across anywhere around the world, anybody with the same name might have different visions and therefore different valuation to what their brand would be worth, right? And sometimes it means that okay, you're going to sell for a little bit less, but you might reach more potential buyers. So that's when it comes to your pricing, it's not necessarily total luck, because it's like you do have control over the volume of people who could potentially afford that, and then within that, you just hope to strike it that one person or that one business that's looking for that domain. And it's again, you could price a domain for $100, right, and not sell it. But then it was priced, that same domain could be priced at $10,000, and if that person, the right timing is right, you might have a buyer at $10,000. That's why you really can't underprice your domains, but you also you could moonshot your domains. There's some people who do that, and they have one-off sales every now and then, but they make up for everything else they spent. And there's people like I'm a little bit more bread and butter domains, like the two-word.coms or short phrases.coms. And for me, it's just a volume game, right? I price my domains where I know people can afford them. Yeah, I sell a domain for $5,000. That people say, "Oh, you could have sold that for 15,000 or 20,000." I go, "Yeah, I could, but I would have diminished my chances of selling it by like 90%, and therefore the overall math just doesn't work out. It's more optimal for me to sell at 5,000, as crazy as that sounds. But when you have your portfolio, you have to make sure your portfolio overall is profitable, and you have to take those things into consideration.
Well, I think that we can use an example to test my theory versus Josh's. Last week, a two-word domain sold for 113,000, weaverobotics.com. And for me, that would have been something that I put on a bin for like $5,000 in Afternic, never even looked at it again. So I'm curious what Josh and other speakers would have said the fair market value was for Weave Robotics, which sold for $113,000.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm actually glad you brought that up. I think that the fair market value for that domain name is about $100, and maybe even a little less than that. I would probably put it in the range of like $10 to $100, and those kind of names are outlier sales that have nothing to do with the like market value of that domain name. And it's really interesting to bring that one up, and I'm glad that that domain name was a recent sale, because I mean, there's so much that we don't know about these kind of sales, right? It's like, who owned the name and why was it priced at 100,000? No, maybe they were just amazingly lucky. Maybe they had inside information over a company and what that company was planning to do. That is not out of the realm of possibility. We don't know, but at the end of the day, we do know that there was a reason why this person priced this domain at 100,000. And we do know, because we're all talking about it, right? And we can look at historical data, that it's a massive outlier sale. I spoke to Braden a little bit about that. Well, actually, I didn't speak to him. He said something in a private conversation. But he said, what stops that name from being, the owner being privy to information that most of us are not privy to. And I think that makes a ton of sense. It's like, if I work for a big technology company or some sort of corporation, and I hear down the grapevine that this big company or this group of entrepreneurs are planning to create a business, and it might be called Weave Robotics or something, and I happen to stumble across that and that domain, or I happen to register it before they register it. People have done, because we all know that there's a lot of entrepreneurs that do stupid things like come up with a name and then don't register it, including large companies. And they went ahead and then they priced it high because they knew that these people could afford it. These things happen, and I think that does not represent a like what I would consider a fair market price for that domain. But also, if it had sold at $5,000, like you mentioned, would I say that that's the the fair market value of that domain name? No, I wouldn't. I would say that if you weren't specifically looking for that domain, what would that domain trade for to an investor who was just purchasing it based on the market dynamics? And it would be somewhere in the $0 to $100 range.
John, before I
And
know,
see, that's
John,
why I
hold on,
believe that it
John. I
goes.
know you're dying to say something, but hold on. I got to say, we're conflating liquid market value with fair market value. Both of you said fair market value is this wide range. So, Joshua, what I will say is, yeah,
No.
let's
For
talk
me,
about
no.
liquid
Hold on,
market
hold on, 1
values.
second.
Yeah.
Hold on. Fair market value for me is what it trades for in the market, which is what most people refer to as wholesale liquid pricing. That's what fair market value is. Like, that's the definition of fair market value. It's like you bring an asset to market. What does it sell for?
Yeah, kind of when
Hold on,
Josh had
Eric,
the
hold on. I want to
Like
say something.
that's like
Then
that
you
is the
guys can.
literal definition. It's not fair market value. Is not you bring an asset to market and you wait 10 years for like some outlier buyer
Sure.
to come along and buy it.
But
That's not
Josh,
what
think
fair market
about with
value is.
the ads, we buy homes. Well, when someone needs to sell their home, the liquid market value, the fair market value in real estate is different than the liquid market value. So you do have to be patient, but you're talking about really getting it sold in a reasonable amount of time. We're not talking about in one day. That's why when you
Yeah,
call We Buy
yeah,
Homes, you're going to sell it
yeah.
for a lower price than if you, list it online and slowly even lower the price to what we would say, what is the fair market, so liquid market
The real
value
estate
is
thing
different
is
in real
interesting
estate
as
than fair
well.
market. Go ahead.
The real estate thing is interesting as well. I'm not thinking about real estate actually. Like my go-to when I think about fair market value is like I'm thinking about, and partially this is because of my background. I'm thinking about FMV leases, and like an FMV lease is, I'm sure you know, but I'll just explain it. Is you lease an asset, and then at the end of the asset, the end of the lease, you have the option to purchase the domain for a buyout, which is a pre-established buyout based on the fair market value of the asset, and lenders are using that fair market value as essentially the price that they can go and turn around and sell it for. Um, and I think that when most people think about fair market value, they are thinking about a price that they can go and turn around and sell it for, in a relatively short period of time. Even in real estate, right? Is when I go to sell my house for fair market value, let's say, I'm 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 not saying I want to put my I'm not trying to put my house on the market for years on end. When I try to sell my house for fair market value, in a relatively normal market, it's going to sell within a fairly short period of time. If I try to sell it above market value, it won't sell, but at fair market value, it's generally going to sell. So, I do think that they are the same. They are the same thing. Yeah, between asset classes there may be slight differences, but that's not a surprise. These are different assets.
I don't see them as the same at all. I see them as completely different because just what you just said. You said the normal conditions. Any norm is set by the. Wouldn't you say that a norm is set by the industry standard? In our industry, there are really two classes of domain speculators and two different classes. There are domainers that look to flip, let's say, in less than 12 months. But then there's an entirely different class of domainer that only wants to hold domains for at least 5 years because they come in, they buy the domain with the expectation that it's not going to sell for at least 3 years. That's not the same as flippers.
Hold on. We're moving away from what I'm talking about, or maybe I'm misunderstanding because
no. Let me go back to what you said. No, I'm actually responding directly to what you said. You said that the assets are just the same, and I'm telling you, no, they're not the same. That the normal conditions for flipping a house.
Sorry. Stop. When did I say the assets were the same?
When you were talking about homes.
I said
you were just saying it. You just said that. Yeah, you said that. You said that they're the same kind of assets.
I 100% did not say that those assets are the same. Just to be clear. And
okay,
I'll be very, very clear right now.
Yeah, go ahead.
And homes are not the same.
Okay, so let me finish what I was going to say about like why it's not fair market value. Because with a home, there's an expectation in the industry that 30 days, 60 days, 90 days has importance within that community of realtors and sellers. So if a home is not sold in 30 days, it means something to the market players, right? In domaining, the amount of time it takes to sell a domain means something totally different to two classes of domainers. If one class of domainer says, I'm buying domains with the intentions of selling it within 12 months, we call them flippers. But then there's an investment class of domainers who buys a domain and says that I don't even care if this domain sells for at least 3 years. I'm not even thinking about it until year 3. And then I'll start thinking about it when year 5 comes and year 10 comes. So what I'm saying is that the fair market value, this doesn't apply to domains because it's nothing like gold, homes, and stocks. It's nothing like that.
Let's dissect that real quick because that's fine. I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but I don't understand how any of that is relevant to what the fair market value of the asset is in a market setting. You're talking about individual domain investors and whatever their business model may or may not be is irrelevant. It really does. What I decide to do with domains once I buy them is irrelevant. The only thing that I'm talking about is if I put a domain up for sale, what price is it going to sell for tomorrow or the next day or within a reasonably short period of time? If it sits on the market for 30 days, it's priced above the fair market value, or you're not getting it in front of the right buyers, which is a discoverability issue. And that's something completely different. And that's something that is an important topic as well that we've discussed in the past. And I think we should continue to discuss in the future. But assuming you're able to get the asset in front of the right market, you should be able to sell that domain if it's priced at the fair market value. But if it's not priced at the fair market value, then it will sit. And, you talk about these different business models of, people that want to flip within 12 months or they want to hold for 5 years. No, I mean, great. I'm the same way. I don't want to sell any of my domains for fair market value. I want to keep them all, and I want to wait for the perfect buyer to, pay me more than, what I bought those domains for at market. Right? I bought them at market, and I bought them for what I would consider a fair price. Call that what you will, but there's a few words in there that kind of lead me to say I bought them for, at the time, what is probably fair market value. And sometimes I try to buy them under that price. Again, discoverability is an important thing there, or the ability to outreach to private sellers and hopefully get names under a fair market value, that's another thing, and that's another business model that we can talk about, is being able to go out and purchase names at a super low price and then sell them into the market immediately. Is something that a lot of people do and a lot of people make money doing. But again, you know, I don't I don't understand. I don't fully understand why we're worried about like definitions. Like I mean, if you don't want to use the word fair market value, you want to use domain market value. Um, I think that I think that people have a problem with the word fair. Is it the word fair that maybe
Well, Josh, I want to
causes
hear
the
from
issue?
Arif. I want to hear, but let's talk liquid market value, because boy, this is like fucking cold
Yeah.
water in the
No,
face of
well,
domainers. There's
I
hardly
think,
any.
I think,
Go ahead, Arif.
yeah, I think where a lot of people like kind of don't really grasp what Josh is saying is because Josh is probably one of the unique people placed in the whole entire industry to know what fair market value is because of his experience with DNWE, right? To me, when he says fair market value, it means like, okay, you put it on DNWE for a few days, and if it sells for that price, that sells for that price. That's pretty much what the liquid or whatever you want to call it. The problem with our industry, it may be not a problem. Like I don't consider it a problem, but a lot of people like they dream of, oh, they want liquidity, right, for domains. But with liquidity, it becomes, well, then people like myself can't go scavenge, right? Because inefficiencies in the marketplace is where, as Josh is talking about, you can get stuff for even below fair market value or liquid value or whatever it is. And that for me is great because, if the market were truly liquid, then we'd have a problem. Well, I would have a problem because I would pay literally 10 times as much for the domains I get today. And so it wouldn't fit my scheme, right? But again, at the same time, what Josh is saying also is that the other really much more important discussion why this is, I think people are confused about it, is because we don't really have much of a market for on the wholesale side, right? It comes down to eyeballs. How many people will see your domains listed? And for a while again, you had DNWE, but that's a fraction of the market. And we just don't have enough people in the business. Like you can't compare it, as Josh said, to real estate, because real estate is very liquid. There's so many people watching it, so many people invest in it, that the moment you put something up, yeah, somebody will see it, and you'll have enough people that with enough demand to give it a price that's more or less justified. Whereas with domains, there's stuff that fall through the cracks. You go to the expiration auctions, right? There's great domains that I know if somebody saw would buy for $500 that sometimes just falls through the cracks, and you can pick it up for $5. Now, again, there's few and far between, but that's the great thing about domains is, and where the opportunity is that there's what you call inefficiencies in the marketplace, and because of that, if you work hard and like find the stuff that falls through the cracks, you can get stuff far below wholesale value or
Can I add something on that topic, and then maybe we can sorry, Todd, and then maybe we can ask John if he wants to say anything else, because I want to make sure he gets a word in as well here. But just to talk about what Arif is saying, and I go to expireddomains.net, and that's we can go and have a look at some expired domains, and one that stands out to me, it's got a pretty high number of bidders right now, is freedomtech.com. Right, great name, right? We all love it, and we all know that it's a good name. It's currently at $800, and it's ending tomorrow. So I think that we all understand that name is probably a fair market price, right? If we were going to go in and buy that name, because we are the market, and we are mostly the participants in these auctions. Was probably somewhere under the $5,000 threshold, right? But if that domain happens to go up and then sell for, let's say it sells for like 20 or 15K, we would then say, oh, an end user must have got, crept into that auction and must have seen it, right? Because we know we all have a pretty good idea of what the fair market price would be for us, the market makers, when we're buying a domain like this. But if an end user, purchased that domain for, let's call it 20K, we would say, oh man, what a great deal for the end user, right? We'd say, oh, I got a steal, because we all know that if we're going to purchase a name for like that for 5K, and There's probably numerous companies out there that could upgrade to it. We probably price a name like that, 50K and above. This is what I'm saying. This is what I mean about fair market. I mean, like, we are the participants in the market for the most part. So when I'm talking about fair market value, I'm talking about like these auctions and these venues where domainers are active.
Yeah, I would
John?
just say that I think that you and I, what we disagree on is the fact that what I believe you're referring to is liquid value and wholesale value versus
Yes.
fair market value. Because to me, the basic definition of a market, right, is a willing seller and a willing buyer. It just takes one on each side. That's all.
Yep.
And what I'm saying is that a lot of domainers, they don't care. I don't care what an exchange says the price of a domain is. What I care about is who I'm trying to sell it to. If I'm a domainer looking for liquidity, then I'm focused on domainers' thoughts on the price of my domain. If I'm a domainer selling to end users, I'm focused on end users' thoughts on the price of my domain. And it's going to be arbitrary and subjective, and that's where negotiations comes in. So we may have a baseline of what we think the domain is, but until the buyers that I foresee as buying my domain, if I'm a person that's in that D to E class, I don't care if 10,000 domainers think that the price of my domain is $5,000. I only care what the 10 end users that I've identified as having the deepest pockets that might want my domain and have an inherent that has an inherent value to them. That's the only group I care about. And I can just create my own lander for that. I don't need exchanges for that.
But then unless you're doing outbound, it's not really fair market value, because if you're looking for like the end users at that pricing, it's generally not like on demand, right? You're usually waiting years. Like for me, I sell 1% of my portfolio a year, which is fine. I'm profitable, right? But that means I'm on average, I'm waiting 100 years per domain, and that's okay, right? Because I'm profitable. But that's
Well, you
the
don't have
difference.
to wait 100 years, Eric. But Eric, hold on. You don't have to wait 100 years to sell a domain. Okay. What I'm saying is that if I have my own online portfolio, I can easily contact any players that I think that might be interested in my domain. If I identify 10 market players and I say, here are companies that could really benefit from having this as this .com, I can easily send out marketing materials to them through the mail, through an email, through a phone
Unless you're doing
call.
outbound, which is fair. Yeah. If you're doing outbound, then yeah.
If I want to, but I'm saying I don't have to, but I can just put up a sales lander and wait. But what I'm saying is that either if you're doing inbound or outbound, I don't care what domainers think about the domain if they're not my buyer audience, is what I'm saying.
That's a given. That's a given. But what you're saying, John, is that you don't believe that you should be that anyone should be mentioning fair market value whatsoever when it comes to domain names, whether it's at wholesale or at retail. Correct? And
no. I don't think that you shouldn't be mentioning. No. I'm just saying that you and I disagree on fair market applying to domain. That's all.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Right. But that's what I mean. Like, you think that fair market value is not a thing in domains. Period. Right. At whether it's correct. So but it is used very frequently within the industry. By some of the top players in the industry, whether it be like Loomis saying that they acquired a domain for the fair market price, or I quoted you talked about Mike Mann's appraisals. So then I went to have a look at one of the appraisals that was posted on X, and I found regentstreet.com, and it very clearly says Accurate Appraisal certifies that regentstreet.com has a fair market value of $246,555. So if that was the fair market value, then do you agree that it should sell at that price?
Not necessarily. And I'm someone that buys appraisals, which are estimates, by the way. So by its definition, appraisal is an estimate. And when you get an appraisal from Mike Mann, he's giving you his opinion based on his experience, combined with AI, combined with different metrics. So that's his opinion. So I can say, this is Mike Mann's opinion. I might take that as my sale price. I might take it as my floor price. I might offer it as a minimum, and I might just totally discard it because it's still his opinion. He might say this domain's fair market price, in my opinion, is $100,000. But guess what? Mike Mann doesn't own that domain. AI doesn't own it. I mean, I own that domain. and I'm the gatekeeper of that domain. So if I say it's worth 2.5 million and I can find an end user that's willing to buy, then that's the fair market price for that domain. See, that's where you and I disagree.
No,
that's all.
It's not the fair market price, but it is the price, because until you've got a willing buyer, there is no market.
Yeah,
but when you add the word fair to it,
John,
but so let's break. So let's just go back to the definition of market, right? I'm gonna go back to it again. The basic definition of a market is a willing seller and a willing buyer. It only requires one on each side. Now, when you add the word fair to it, how do you get from one willing buyer and one willing seller to what is fair? I determine and the buyer determine what is fair. Our final price is the only determination of what's fair. That's where you and I disagree at.
No, I'm just going based off the definition, right? Fair market value.
But I'm talking about the definition. But I just gave you the definition of what a market is. One willing buyer and one willing seller. It only requires one on each side. So we determine what's fair, not you, not the marketplace, not the exchanges, and not an army of 10,000 domainers. Just myself and the buyer. That's it.
No. Well, John, if you contacted those 10, if John's talking about, say he had 10 buyers, if you contacted those 10 potential buyers, those top ones, and they all weren't interested, now is your fair market value 0? So I believe it's, like what Josh was talking about, and I don't really almost agree with either one of you about, I almost, is there a fair market value even with domain names? But if you're saying, listen, I believe I focused on these top 10 potential buyers, but if all 10 of those are not interested in your domain, so now what is the fair market value of it, John? Is
on
it
that
nothing?
day? On that
now
day,
it's nothing,
Todd,
or still it goes back to you since you're the seller?
On that day, it's 0 on that day. But guess what? Those 10 buyers, what I've seen historically, they can change their opinion the next day. You may have 10 buyers that tell you, you may say to them, I saw that you might be a good candidate for this domain. It can add value to your branding. You want to buy it at 100,000? Say, oh no, hell no. Go fly a kite somewhere. I'm blocking you, whatever. But guess what? Often the very same buyers that rejected you on day one will come back a year later and say, you know what? I thought more about this, and I would like to have that .com domain. And you know what? Is it still 100? No, it's not 100,000 anymore. It's now 200,000. We'll pay you 200,000. It happens. So I would say on that day that they rejected me, it was worth 0 fair market reason, but I still own it. And the fair market is just unknown on that day.
But it's not necessarily 0, right? Like if you put it on DNWE, you might have sold it for $50 or $100 or $200. That's what fair market value is. Like you guys are
that's the liquid value.
Yeah, no, but it's kind of different things. Like what Josh is talking about is fair market value is kind of like a overall economics term, right? In finance, where if you put your stuff up, list it somewhere, and there's enough demand for it, what's the demand and what's the price, and that's what fair market value is, right? On a relative short-term scale, we can argue.
No, because the fair market value, when I look up fair market value in the Investopedia, it does not include domain names for a reason. It includes stocks, commodities, and homes and cars.
The tax code also doesn't include domains, dude, but I promise you, you still got to report taxes.
And you report them as for capital gains reasons or whatnot, right? But there's a reason why domain.
Everyone does it differently, but if we're going to treat domains as an asset class, then they have a fair market value.
And that fair market value is oftentimes unknown. That's the point that I'm making. It's oftentimes unknown until the day the right buyer comes along.
Well, you say
that's all I'm saying.
You say until the right buyer comes along, but what we're saying is when a buyer comes along, John, you're just not wanting fair market value to be close to liquid value, or obviously the same as liquid value. In domain names, people, and we are making a case that fair market value is really close to liquid domain, and you're saying no, and we're saying, listen, when you place a name out there, what can you move it for? So I do think we're mincing words here. Liquid domain value is okay. So I want to focus on that liquid domain value. Brad, I know you joined. What comments do you have? But
well,
go ahead.
Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. I'd like to hear your definition of liquid value. But what I wanted to bring into this conversation is this asset class is more like a fine art. Okay, where and John's example, you can find one person to buy one of your pieces of fine art, but that could have been a planned sale to elevate the perception of the value of that, but it has no real value in the marketplace unless it's that one person who's, shilling for you. There's no, I mean, you could have a Picasso etching that you think is worth a lot, and it means nothing to 90% of the people. You know what I mean? And in the domain marketplace, there are so few players. It's not like going on Zillow. Everybody wants a house. Not very many people want a domain name. So I just wanted to bring that up, and I'm very curious about what a liquid value is. So Todd, what were you going to say about that?
Okay, well, before we go to Jeff Falali and then Josh, I see you have a comment. Well, liquid value to me is the key to everything here in domains. And it's like, all right, well, people don't like to. I used to get into this almost with Arif saying, Arif would talk about, I'm thinking about wholesaling my names. And it's like, well, you better, I've done it. You've got to mark them down to where there's somebody who finally just snaps them up. And that means, okay, like with those 4-letter, you start pricing them at 400, 350, 300, 200. Eventually there's a liquid value, meaning somebody's going to pick them up. Okay, that's maybe different than what you guys want to define as fair market value, but we're not talking about fair market value now. Now we're talking about what we all know, liquid domain name value. So the liquid value of most names have no liquid value. You can put them out there and then no one even wants them. They'll wait, until you let them expire, and then they may get registered. But anyway, so I love speaking about what domains even have a liquid value to them, and when they do, what do we consider that to be? So Josh, make your comment, and then let's go to Jeff Falali, who I'm sure has plenty of comments about liquid value here. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I think for the most part, fair market value, liquid value, they're pretty close. If you wanted to get super technical, and I think that you could probably could, but let's not go there. I would say liquid value is slightly lower than what the fair market value is in most cases, and I think that applies to domains, and that is also the general definition itself. Is that liquid value is generally slightly lower than fair market value.
Yeah, Jeff, what's up? Nice to see you.
What's going on? Yeah, I tend to agree with you guys. Like, domains are not real estate. It's totally different. I mean, the fair market value is what you can get. And just because someone pays $1 million for a name does not make that the fair market value. People overpay for assets all the time.
I agree with that. And again, I used fair market value the other day in a couple of tweets, because that's that's how I refer to, that's how I value names in the market. If that terminology is not your favorite terminology in the world, that's fine. That's completely fine. Liquid value, wholesale market value, very, very similar. For the most part, serve the same purpose. And one of the reasons why I talk about these three things, this wholesale market, is because the one area of the domain pricing world that we can often predict or make some sort of accurate valuation on what a domain will trade for. When you start talking about what we all collectively as domain investors sell names for, it's an absolute crapshoot. And for the longest time since I got into this industry, everyone wants to talk about retail domain appraisals. What should I price this domain at? What is this domain worth? How many times have you heard that? What is this domain worth? That in itself makes no sense, because you can look at what the domain is worth from a market perspective, like what me or Ish or Josh or Nickel might be willing to pay for this domain, based on, you know, a variety of factors that we determine using, most of the time today, data, right? Go out and we go to Crunchbase and we say how many companies are using this domain, how much money have they raised, what industry are they in, what's you know, how many employees do they have, how many trademarks are out there, what if I type it into Google, how many companies come up, is it used in commerce and culture, you know, what other, what you don't, you know, there are probably 5 to 10 other, you know, nuances that you can look at, um and then from there we as a market determine how much we want to pay for it. And oftentimes, we're all going to be in a similar kind of range. What I'd be willing to pay for the name, what Nickel would be willing to pay for the name, what Josh would be willing to pay for the name. We're all going to be in a somewhat similar range, which is why we're able to predict the outcome of a lot of these auctions when end users don't jump in. When end users jump in, it goes great. It goes different because they are buying for a completely different reason, and it's relevant to them and them only and their business and what they're doing with the domain. Um, so what I focus on, and what is when I'm talking about valuation, are the controllables and and the market based on the raw asset itself, because we do not care about how that domain is used. We only care about what we think we might be able to sell it for. So we create this market, and it's often referred to as the wholesale market. But then when we sell it at what we call retail, it's just what we want to sell it for, and then what the buyer is willing to pay. And we're just looking for that one buyer that has a vision for this domain beyond the raw assets value, because it does, you know, you know, immense things for their brand, um, outside of just the raw asset value. And you can't put a value on that. And that's why this "what is my domain worth" is just a load of, it's just a load of nonsense. I can tell you what it's worth in the market, but can I tell you what it's worth to the eventual buyer? No, they probably can't even tell you what it's worth until they've got it and they start using it. They can guess, and that's why oftentimes you see like very, very large transactions where a company says, you know, I think this domain is going to be worth a lot of money to us because it's going to help us buy, you know, get more customers. It's going to enhance our brand. We're going to get better email deliverability, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that has nothing to do necessarily with the raw asset, which is the domain.
Well, okay, we got a lot of people here on stage, and I know they want to make some comments. You know, this has been a great conversation just talking about the market value. I won't even use whether it's liquid or fair market, but the market value of domain names.
Yeah.
And Josh, there was this new tool that came out. Howard Fellman, he's a friend and a colleague, been a domain investor for a long time. He's really a businessman out of South Florida. He started this new appraisal site, oceanfront domains, excuse me, .com. And it really, you know, it's basically AI powered, really interesting. And I guess domainers are loving it these last few days. Even Rick Schwartz loves it because I guess it's giving great valuations, or it's giving a lot of data too that's important, that's helpful when you're selling a name or trying to explain it to someone, I guess, if you do outbound, but it's giving nice valuations to it. Have you seen oceanfront domains, this particular new appraisal service?
I have a friend of mine in the space sent me a message yesterday about it, and I took it for a little spin. Um, I think it's really cool. I think that Howard did a great job. You know, here's the thing, and I'll be brutally honest. The domain investors are going to like the tool that provides the highest valuations possible. Like that's what we like. I want a tool, and this is a tweet that I sent out yesterday. It's like, I want a tool that when I'm trying to sell a domain, it says that my domains are all worth you know, $1 million, and when I'm buying, I want it to say that they aren't worth anything. But and I think that a lot of people do like this tool because it does provide some pretty high valuations. Um, but on a more serious note, I did run a couple of names through there, and I do think that, if you're looking for some guidance on, where you should be pricing your domains at retail after you buy them in the market, I think that using a tool like that is, looking at numerous variables, looking at comparable sales, looking at some data, uh, to help you price your domains is absolutely fine. Um, so yeah, I think it's a cool tool.
Yeah, I think what I think Howard did with that tool is he used his knowledge in the field to put in criteria and actual words that fit the vernacular of this industry, and it helps round out and give it depth to the potential to someone who's not in the industry. You know what I mean? So it could be very good for outbounding your names and stuff like that. But what what you were saying, Josh, is true, because in a certain way, it doesn't even matter what someone else says what a fair market value is. You might have a valuation, but that has no bearing on if someone's going to buy it at that price or not. You know what I mean? So it's like all perception.
100%, 100%. And I'll tell a little story as well. I brokered a deal um, a while ago, and it was a seven-figure deal in the end. But the buyer was a publicly traded company, and the guy came to me and he said, we want to buy this domain. What's a fair price? And I remember the first thing I said to him is, I said, you're not going to get a fair price. Um, you know, Not a fair price in my world, but in your world, it might be a very fair price. So the question, the better question is, is how are you going to use it? And if you're going to use it to enhance your brand and do X, Y, and Z, then you have a pretty good understanding of what the ROI might be for you. You've got a completely different uh, definition of what's fair compared to what I do. Uh, so a fair price isn't the right question. I can tell you more about what kind of price range I think we might be able to get it in. Um, but in terms of like, are you going to get it at like a fair market price? No, you're not, because it's a unique asset, and if you really want it, and it's highly valuable domain that multiple other companies would love to own. So you know, fair fair is an interesting word, and I can understand why it creates some back and forth in terms of like disagreeing, on what that means.
Well, Josh, I want to talk about, okay, exclusively right now, buy it now pricing, because if somebody has a make offer pricing and you get the data that it's, Oprah, like John was talking earlier, if I know somebody's got all the money in the world, I'm going to price it differently. Now, I've never really done that because I mostly use buy it now. And I always think, then if you're trying to just sell to the person that's got all the money, then just set your buy it now real high. When you have a make offer, of course, you have room to move and you're trying to get data on the potential buyer, but I'm talking exclusively right now for buy it now pricing. So Josh, when you set your buy it now pricing, and then we'll whip it around the horn here. When you set your buy it now pricing, are you are you setting it for that tip top, those super wealthy buyers that just got funded, or public companies like you mentioned, or are you setting it at a range that you don't care whether it's a small company buying it, a big company buying it, you're coming up with what you think is a good price to move it within a certain time period. So how do you set your buy it now pricing?
Yeah. So uh, there's no right or wrong way to doing this, right? Someone like John might prefer to have a lot of his domains with make offer, and then determine what they want to ask for the domain based on who the buyer is. Um, and kind of try to suss out who the buyer is when they inquire and get an understanding of them and their business. And I think that's the Rick Schwartz model as well. And no problem with that model whatsoever. I think that, in some circumstances, you're certainly able to capitalize on that kind of strategy. For me, I price all of my domains, every single one of them. And if, even the 7-figure names, if someone comes and says, what's the price for this, I tell them the price, and then we go from there. In terms of like a system in place for determining what I price the domain at, it's really quite simple, and a lot of it comes down to use in commerce. How many companies out there would like to own that domain name, and what industry are they in? Are they in finance, or are they in cleaning? Because if they're in finance, I know that historically they're a lot more likely to pay a higher price than window cleaners. So those are the kind of things that go into my pricing model. So if I purchase a domain in closeouts for $50, and it's a nice name, but there aren't an awful lot of buyers that are using that as their brand, I'm going to price that domain to sell. I've got it. I'm an investor. I got it for a reasonable price, $50 or whatever. I'm going to price it as such. So price that domain for probably under 5K. Does that mean that if and I'm using John for an example, just because I know that he likes to get into the negotiations and he likes to follow the more of the Mike Mann, Rick Schwartz approach. Is it a bad idea to take that domain and have a contact form and wait for someone to inquire and then go from there in terms of pricing? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. If that is the method that you feel comfortable extracting the maximum amount of value from, then you should do that. I'm trying to cut down on the emotion from my personal investing strategy, and make it more streamlined so that I can scale, and I don't need to be in the weeds responding to lowball offers that annoy me, or people that message me and call me a squatter or what have you. So I don't want to deal with that. But if you enjoy that, and you like that, you like the ability to engage in a sales in a sales negotiation, then go for it. It's not. I'm not saying it's wrong.
Great information there, and I want to get. We'll go to Arif, then John, then Brad, then Jeff. Please, I hope you all will answer this. We're talking exclusively about buy it now, and Josh mentioned, well, he considers all sorts of different things, from the price you pay for it to what industry it's in and he said the word price to sell. So first, to you, Arif, how do you decide on a buy it now price?
It all starts pretty much similar to what Josh is saying, is that before you buy a domain, any domain, you always have to ask your question, and multiple times ask and re-ask it. Who are the buyers for this domain, right? And then so the answer to that question really dictates how you price the domain. Like if there's only one real buyer out there, well, then you price it for that one buyer. I'll be careful, UDRP stuff and trademark stuff. If there's only one buyer, sometimes you're there. But forget if it's not an issue, then you can price it higher, right? You price it optimally for the buyer. But otherwise, if you have a broad category, a broad sort of potential buyer domain, well, then you might not want to price it to the moon. For me, oftentimes, again, like I told you, sometimes I sell domains at $5,000, and he says, "Oh, you could sell that for $10,000." I go, "Yeah, but I'd be maybe 3 times less likely to sell that." So overall, if I sell 5 domains at $5,000 versus one domain at 10,000, I'm making 15,000, pricing it at $5,000, right? So there's different price points, but again, it's different. The answer is different for every domain. Sometimes it could be the opposite, right? Sometimes, okay, if I price it at $10,000, well, I'm only reducing my chances by 10%, then it's certainly more worthwhile to price it at $10,000. And that's why it's super important to understand for each domain that you buy, like who are the buyers? Like before even getting to the pricing model, you have to ask yourself who are the buyers so that there actually are some, because that's a big mistake in this industry is a lot of people, they buy domains that there really aren't any buyers for, right? That's probably a different discussion. But yeah, so for me, like I really go domain by domain. I ask myself, who are the buyers for this domain and what are the probabilities of selling and what's the sweet spot? Because there are truly certain sweet spots in this industry that are better than others. Like it's for example, like most people have credit cards that are $5,000. So to price your domain at $6,000 it's kind of silly because you're eliminating a lot of potential buyers for no really good reason, and your sell-through rate is going to drop significantly by going to that point. But if you think a buyer is going to buy it at $10,000, right, then you price it there. So there are certain sweet spots, there's certain technical stuff to know, but really at the end of the day, you ask yourself, who is the buyer for this domain, or who are the buyers, and you price accordingly, because every domain is different. And for sometimes I price my stuff to the moon, but I generally operate with keyword.coms and phrase domains where I think there are multiple potential buyers, right? Which I like because with volume there's consistency, right? It's any single domain is pure luck, but once you know what you're doing and you have a certain skill set and your certain quality of domains and you have hundreds if not thousands of domains, you get some consistency, and that's where you can start to apply the math on a long-term basis, and it's kind of predictable to a certain degree.
Well, I will give it to Arif. He knows his portfolio. He talks about the sweet spot. He doesn't overreach. He wants to be profitable, and that already is fucking hardly anybody can do it in this business. Knowing Josh puts a buy it now on all of his names, very important information coming from an expert. John, how do you determine a buy it now price?
Yeah, for bins, I just look at what the comparable sales are on the weekly sales reports for that naming convention. I use my own past sales as a model, and sometimes I'll use like the CPC for the industry that the domain might be in, because I have like pretty much a routine and a convention for how I buy domains. So I usually it's going to be a domain that's less than 3 words, less than 3 syllables, and it's easy to spell. So typically those I can just look on the comparable sales, and I'll say, okay, well this domain sold for $14,000. They're very similar. The marketplace is very similar for my buyers like that domain, and I'll just price it. In the other class of domains, I don't use make offer. I use minimum offer. So that will keep out the low baller. So instead of just having to make offer, I just say that this is a domain that I'm not even willing to have a conversation with unless you have a budget that's over 25,000 or over 50,000. That's kind of how I do that.
That's good stuff, John. I mean that you're no bullshitter there. John does price some names that buy it now, and I like your considerations before that. Before we ask Brad and Jeff, I want to know how you guys price it, buy it now. What do you want to say, Josh?
No, I just want to thank John, and I think it's important to say that the guy, John, you speak very well, man, and I've mentioned this before, but I can see that you spend so much time studying this space and learning from everyone, and I wish you I wish you all the success, man, all the success in the world, and I will also say I guarantee that for the price that I've sold a few names, I bet you John would have sold them for more.
Yeah, let's don't be so nice to John. He's going to be around for a long time. We want to make sure he's in check, right, John? No, it is good to have. Well, Brad, how do you set a buy it now price? Because it is important. Arif wants to price them to sell, considers even credit card limits and stuff like that. I love all that because he's like, listen, I'm trying to sell some names. How do you have a unique portfolio, Brad? How do you price? Set a buy it now price. I can't hear you, but sounds better than normal. Well, go ahead, try it again, Brad. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Okay, we just hip on over to Jeff Halali. Well, Jeff has sold a lot of names over these last few years, and some he'll sell in the 3 digits, 4 digits, 5 digits because he prices them to sell. Well, Jeff, what's happening lately with your, with sales, and how do you set a buy it now?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we
Yeah.
can. Pretty good, actually. Go ahead.
Sweet. That's a good start. I'm just playing in domains. This is like money I would be taking to the casino, playing blackjack with. It's less than 2% of my portfolio. But all my names are priced buy it now, lease to own, make offer. 80% of my names are below 10,000, 60% are below 5,000. And I'm totally fine with flipping names. I mean, other domainers buy my names a lot of times. And I'm cool with that. I'm just flipping capital. I do zero outbounding. If I had to do outbounding, I'd just drop all my domains. Everything is after Nick, 90%. Was it Dan now after Nick? I rarely sell anything at Sea-Doo or Adam. I kind of feel like those platforms are a waste of time, but I still list my names and reprice them there as well. But yeah, I'm just having fun with inbound. It's nice to wake up with those emails. You sold a name, sweet. But yeah, like most of mine are below 10,000. They're like at 8888, and then 60% are at 4888 or below. And I saw a lot of names. I'm like Arif. I saw a lot of names in the 1,000 to 4,000 range. I mean, that's like Arif said, people can slap out a credit card. I think a lot of times um, it's a spur of the moment decision. And if people can just slap out a credit card or put it on an LTO, they do, whereas they would have talked themselves out of it if they had to go through multiple steps and messaging back and forth with a broker or whatever. They'll talk themselves out of it or find another name they can buy cheaper, because we all know there's always competitive names that we can buy cheaper. I mean, we're all sharks when we buy names. I don't want to pay anything for names, but we know how that is. Anyway, that's me.
Well, thanks, Jeff. And one thing I want to mention is all the top guys sell names between 1 and 5,000. James Booth just posted a couple sales that were under 10 grand, one under five. I can't remember either one of them, but it's because he knows you got to sell some names, and that really is the sweet spot. Adam, ATOM, not an Adam that we know, but Adam, the marketplace. Yeah, that data is important. People that are going there that don't have a name in mind, that pick up a name, it is much easier to spend less than 5,000. Now, everybody in the domain space, domain event, we kept thinking, okay, so the sweet spot was 1 to 2,000, 3,000. We hope it goes up to 5,000. We hope that sweet spot's 10,000 someday, 15,000.
Well,
No, yeah, go ahead.
I'd say Darpin, the owner of Adam, he often refers to, I think it's 2,500 or 2,300 or something like around that area, where there is a sweet spot where once you start going below that number, obviously the lower your price, the more your volume, but less proportionally. Like if you let's say something at 2,500, if you priced it at half the price, you would not get double the sales, right? And that's for the average domain, right? Again, there's always exceptions. You never price your any single domain because of the averages. You want to really go one by one when you price your stuff. But overall, like for me, I don't really price my domains below 2,000. I think it's pretty rare I get one below 2,500. My typical one is 3, 4, in that range. And sometimes I get more, but my bread and butter domains. I'm not shooting for the moon for most of my portfolio. Every now and then, like last year, I got a 5-figure sale, but I'm not counting on those, and I'm still profitable. And that's the thing. It's just you have to be realistic with your portfolio. Like I have a very distinct portfolio where I have a certain range of domains. I don't really venture outside of that. I could, but I don't. Like Josh is a really great person to learn from because he buys and he operates in a wide range of styles of domains. So he has a lot of experience. Plus, also he operated DNWE, so that also gives him a lot of knowledge and skill set on the wholesale side. So that's why I always like to listen to what he has to say, because he's a naturally smart guy, but he also has that data in his head that helps him. With when he look prices his domains, he understands what the ranges are, where the buyers are, what the chances are, all these things that like most of us after time we develop a gut feel for. It's hard for us to put into words, but it's all these little things that add up, and you have to have that knowledge and have that skill set. And over time, if you really do it properly and be very disciplined in what you buy, you can have a profitable portfolio, because it's very easy to talk about single domains here and there and whatever it is, but at the end of the day, your portfolio needs to be profitable, meaning like every year you have to pay for all your renewals and plus make it worthwhile your time and all that stuff, and that's not easy for many people. So you always got to be careful for that.
Well, I want to address this naturally smart with if Josh is. Josh, do you know who Kaja Gugu is?
Sorry?
You know Kaja Gugu?
No.
Kaja, it's a band from the 80s from the UK. Well, you know Dexy's Midnight Runners, right? I mean, surely, John.
No.
Anyway, so you're young, but okay, Josh, you said something this week.
Let me address that I'm not naturally smart.
Yeah.
Just,
Well, I
Well,
want to
then even
address
better, you
something
do all the work. Yeah.
that you posted about sell-through rate and pricing names. But first, I wanted to give Brad a chance. Brad, were you back? It's where we can hear you.
Oh no, Brad.
Yeah, sorry,
This is what
Brad. You
happens,
need to
Brad.
just, I mean,
Brad,
not only jump out of the
you lost
room, do
connection.
a few push-ups, get a drink of water, and
Yeah,
then come back. But okay, Josh, and then
we'll
just chime in,
we'll
Brad. We'll
invite you
take.
back up.
Well, Josh, you posted the other day. You might as well just post your names under $1,000 if you want a fast sell, because as soon as you price them over $1,000, you might as well go up to 48.88. So you were basically saying, these 1,200, 2,200, you might as well price it 4,888. What has made you say that? Why do you feel that way? Is it because your experience with your sales platforms?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a little bit of that. I'll say this: like most of the stuff that I talk about, I've got like more definitive data to like back it up, and I would say that there are a lot of guys out there that have a lot more data than I do, that mess around with pricing and try to get a feel for pricing. But
Hey, Josh, your audio's a little low. I can hear you. We can always hear you, but it seemed like it's got a tiny bit lower than before.
He's fine for me.
What about now?
Yeah, that's a little better.
Okay.
But yeah, Arif said it's fine, so all good.
Okay. So, essentially, what I'm saying is that I think that we've all been selling these kind of like inventory names in that 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 price range for a while, and I just think that the tolerance now, for buying these lower value names is like inflation's a real thing, and prices go up, and I just feel like if you're able to get the domain that you want for $4,000, in between 4 and 5 grand, it's not a huge difference between that and 2-3. Do I have a massive portfolio showing data to suggest that it wouldn't change the sell-through rate? No, I don't. I think if you move your prices from 2 or 3K up to 4,800 or whatever, you probably lose a few sales. But I do think that prices, you need to raise prices over time, because A, things get more expensive, and B, your domain's mature, and sometimes, oftentimes, when they mature, they get better. Sometimes they don't, but yeah, I just think, honestly, to put it bluntly, I just think $4,888 for a decent domain makes a lot of sense. If the domain is not very good and you want to get it moved and you want to get rid of it, the best chance to sell it is going to be under $1,000.
Yeah, your audio's fine. My earbuds were falling out of my ears. Hey, so those names that you own with Josh Schoen, like Oya, OYA.com and Galactic.com, great names. I
Yeah.
hope Josh S owns 70% of them. Anyway, I don't know what. Anyway, but so what do you have those priced at? OYA.com, because boy, that could be a really wide range. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, if it was just like a random three-letter.com, I don't know, probably price it at like 250 or something, but it's not a random not a random three-letter.com. It's got meaning. It's got a lot of usage as a brand, not just as an acronym. So yeah, I think that domain is priced at like $1 million. And I don't know, probably take something like 500K plus. But yeah, I mean, listen, like the chances of selling, these names is not exactly high. But this is where things get interesting at the higher end of the market, particularly when you start talking about market values. And just I don't want to like go back into that topic again, but if we wanted to sell that domain tomorrow, we could probably sell it for mid to high five figures.
Yeah, and maybe even right up to 100 dimes, or maybe a little bit more. I know. I mean, several people in your circles know that's one that geez, so many companies are branded with one letter in front of the OYA. So it definitely has a pronounceable and 3 letters. So that's a great one. Speaking of 3 letters, um, I wanted to mention there was I have some notes here. I know I want to speak about LTO, but the reason I wanted to bring it up is there was something else. Some other names sold, but I wanted to ask you what you thought of LTO.com. What do you think that should be priced at? That's Nat
Oh,
Cohen's
were
name.
you talking about, I think, TXT.com?
Oh yeah, TXT, right, sold for a half a million on fruit.co. And I wanted to talk to you about these other marketplaces because Namecheap and all this, Namebright, everybody's got new marketplaces. Even Web3 companies got new marketplaces, and fruit.co, I don't know. So right, TXT sold for a half a million. And I thought, and they sold it on, I guess it was purchased or sold in 2023 for 300 grand. And then now it was sold for a half a million, or like 502,000 on a 12-month LTO, which I think fantastic. Let them start getting some money back that they spent on that thing. Um, okay, so that was a. Tell me what you think about that price for TXT, and then that Nat Cohen's name LTO. I just like to bring up Nat all the time. I speak to him every once in a while, and I love LTO.com really for outside of our space, but just leases in general. But about those two, what do you think of that TXT price, and then LTO? What would you price that at?
So TXT, I haven't done any research on that. I think that it's probably like 500 grand, 550 grand. I think that's a fine price. Um, I think I would have been asking for about. I think I probably would have been asking slightly more, but I also think I probably would have settled on selling around that price for that domain as well. So I think the seller overall on a 12-month payment plan is pretty short. So it's even if they didn't get a large amount up front, you know each payment is worth quite a lot. So um, I would say that the seller did fine. Like, did they like hit an absolute home run? Like, like if you had told me that domain sold for 2 million, would I be shocked? No. But yeah, I think 500K is fine. But that like this is exactly what I'm talking about, right? This is exactly why we can't like we can't boil down and start talking about valuation, like retail valuations, because like on one hand I'm telling you 500K is fine, but on the other hand I'm telling you I wouldn't be shocked at all if the price was 2 million, and that's a pretty big delta. So but yeah, I mean, great domain name. I definitely wouldn't have paid 300K for it as an investor. But yeah, cool name. And then LTO LTO.com. I haven't looked at any of the stats, but I assume that most of the LTO Capital, LTO Real Estate, that is not as good of a name as TXT. TXT is a much better name. LTO is probably a name that I would be. I think it's probably the market value of it is probably about 40-ish K, and probably like 300K ish retail.
I just got a call from Ned. He said, "Tell that guy he doesn't know." Hey, well, I really find it interesting that you say that because I was thinking LTO, Josh. Like in the real estate space, that I think in the future you're going to find, um, people have always wanted to lease to own homes, but it just was not. We look out there, it's definitely an option, but not a big option, not an option that a lot of sellers offer, not a lot of brokers and agencies offer that many properties that are leased to own. So I always think there's room in the future for the real estate in the real estate business for LTOs, and I can just see the enormous. I think it's cooler than home and homes.com. I mean, because
Mm.
Zillow, Redfin, and all these things, they all do the same thing. In my opinion, LTO would be, focused and specifically different. Okay, so I see a friend in the audience. He's down there. Yeah, it's I would say Jason Franklin. The reason I bring it up because domainers love to get like your opinion, Josh. So Jason has a absolutely fantastic three-letter exl.com. I always remember that. So you price names, and I'm saying without doing a lot of research from your gut, be fair. What would you have EXL nows in your portfolio. What are you pricing that at as a buy it now?
Yeah. So I can't price. I refuse to price names based on gut now because um especially three-letter.coms like that because like my gut reaction to EXL is like, oh, that's so cool, right? Like especially because I've seen Jason around and he talks about it a lot, so like in my head I'm thinking about like Excel. um but um you know that's not the way that I go about determining value. And so I prefer to look at the usage. And a lot of people will say, well, that's not the way that you should price names at retail. But it is the way that I value domains as a domain buyer. And it's the only way that I believe you should value domains as a domain buyer, because uh, you should buy based on data, uh, because that's what works. So exl.com is not a not a bad three-letter.com. It's pretty solid. But it's not an amazing three-letter.com either. Typical metrics that I look at, like like we've talked about in the past, Todd. Um, Number of TLDs taken, number of companies using the name on Crunchbase, number of companies using the name on LinkedIn, a number of companies using the name on Open Corporates, number of trademarks for EXL, Google results, all of these things, right? And I would say that for EXL, it's probably it's on the lower side. So I think that it's a name that probably trades on the market for around the 30K range, and then uh, probably about 250 to 300 would be where I price it retail, but I think I would take less.
Interesting. Let's see if Brad can speak. Hope Jason
Well,
didn't mind
Todd,
us
you're
talking
like
about.
you're setting me up. You're setting me up to get hated.
Yeah,
To
well,
get
the
hated.
No,
thing,
no, hi.
the thing is,
Thank you
they
for
know
letting
it,
me
but
back
I know,
in.
I know. Jason knows he's slick, so Jason knows he'll price it at where he wants to price it. But it is, the only risk taking here is, yeah, he doesn't want his potential buyer listening and thinking, well, I want to use some of what
Well,
Josh said to
yeah, but
negotiate,
like
but
that's
we're not worried about it.
yeah. But like, I mean, like, listen, like that's the thing. It's like, and if anyone were to ever listen to this space, which they won't, can barely get 100 people in here, uh, and everyone that came, appreciate you coming. The reality again is like, if you told me tomorrow that exl.com sold for $1 million, I would not be surprised, because you know value is in the eye of the buyer and the seller. And if Jason values it highly, he is perfectly entitled to value it at, $1 million, or I see that he's got it priced at 2.2 million. So he really likes this name. You know, if someone else has a vision that aligns with that valuation, then sometimes the stars align. But you know, that has nothing to do with the way that I personally assess domains.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. And
Then-
and me, I'm an expert. I'm going to go to you, Brad. I appreciate you being here because it's going to segue right into what we're going to talk about next, and that is some of these new domain marketplaces. But I want to say, I think, when you're sitting on an asset like Jason is, yeah, I think go ahead and price it like he's got it 7 figures.
No,
Hold on,
I'll get you there.
go off mute, Brad. Go on mute. It
Okay,
says
now let me just say before I get off, because I'm going to get off.
okay.
I'm driving my friend to the doctor, so I'm just enjoying listening to this. So I'm just going to get off. But this is an extraordinary conversation. Just a couple issues is about it is more like a fine art market. It's about educating the public and one's own risk tolerance plus time all come into play here. And thank you guys. Have a good day.
Thanks for
Hey,
coming, Brad.
yeah, thanks, Brad. And I
Good
wanted to
man.
finish on the thing I was saying about Jason's team. I think, yeah, price it. If I had it too, I'd do probably just exactly what Jason's doing, and that is I price it at in the 7 figures. And no, listen, this is for a company that understands what Excel means, and we know naming. You don't always have all the letters there. He doesn't need EXCEL, but it's for Excel and excellent and everything. So I think the right company, yeah, could easily price it at 7 figures, take mid to high six. And I know Jason's thinking, Todd, boom, that's what I'm thinking too. But right, you need some things to align up, but you're in the game with a name like that, and he knows what he's put into it, so he knows, yeah, he's going to get that out of it, and at least 2 or 3 times. That's worse. I think worst case scenario. So he's sitting pretty. Okay, about these marketplaces I wanted to get to, but first, Arif, did you have a comment? And then I want to talk about these new marketplaces.
I'm good for now. You guys can continue on.
I've never heard you say that in my life. Hey, okay, so
I want to give people a chance to talk. I know I ramble on a lot. And I just want to say though, John, I did appreciate your ramble yesterday in the legal room. I did appreciate that. So sometimes I'm the rambler, but I'm glad I'm not alone anymore.
yeah, and thanks for joining us. By the way, I next week on Domain Name Law we got Sten Lillestrom, and Sten really is more made to order for a room like this where we can talk about his domain strategies, investing strategies, and selling. But I'm telling you, you gotta come to Domain Name Law next week. It's next Tuesday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. We got Sten Lillestrom, fantastic domain investor. Listen, the guy is slick. The guy is smart. It's the kind of things I say about you when you're not around, Josh. Okay, so the guy really is, and he's fun to talk to, has opinions, and I love that. And if you haven't seen Rick Schwartz on 10 with Jen, you got to see Rick Schwartz. That's why I always liked Rick. I doubt if he knew me well, he probably wouldn't like me too well. But I like that he always has an opinion, and that's how I was raised at Lehman Brothers. You have an opinion, okay? You have an opinion. But about these domain marketplaces, okay? So I was on Namecheap, Josh, and I clicked auctions because I'm looking and I don't see that any of them are reserve auctions. I don't know. I'm not real familiar with their marketplace yet, but I do like it. It gives you some data and shows you some shit in the margin. But are you using? Have you bought anything from Namecheap, or you list anything at Namecheap? What's your experience with that? And then also, what's going on at NameBright? And then have you heard of Fruit.co? Tell me.
I buy names from Namecheap. I bought recently. I bought Vigor.ai from Namecheap. I bought Casper.org from Namecheap. There's some good names. There are some good names on Namecheap. I haven't used the Spaceship Seller Hub yet, but Spaceship and the Namecheap team, have done a really good job from what I can see with Spaceship and just the UI, the UX. I mean, they understand domains as well. As we all know, they have a fantastic portfolio of their own. They're they're a pretty unique group of people, Richard and his team, in that they don't just build really good products, but they actually understand domains better than most. They have a very good portfolio of their own. So, you know, pretty bullish on them as a company, to be honest with you. And yeah, in terms of like other marketplaces, um, you know, FD is a company that I respect. I feel like they're always, you know, trying new things. I've heard a lot of good things about FD Pay. I've got multiple friends that have used FD Pay on large deals. You know, high five-figure deals that I'm aware of that have, you know, taken place there. I know that they're working on a marketplace as well. You know, I think they already have a version of it up. So, you know, there are no shortage of players that are trying to build new products. I think I saw the other day another one. Do you remember? Maybe you remember. Maybe someone in here knows what it was, but it looked exactly like Dan. Like literally looked exactly like Dan. Like they completely copied like uh the entire UI. Trying to see if I can find it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and there's so much news going on in this space all the time. I was talking the other day, and John was like, "Hey, so AI.com did sell. They did finally make the announcement, but they haven't told the price." Well, and then people are, constantly, what's it called when the news person gets the story? I forget what it doesn't matter. But there's just so much news going on in this space. But Josh, so Namebright, is doing their huge domains market. They're allowing that, and like you said, Namecheap and Spaceship, which I'm like, can you combine these things? What is the story? I mean, I understand he's running two. It's like I used to do Can of Honey and Mara Honey. I have them, they're both my brand. Have them compete with each other. But Namecheap and Spaceship, sometimes it confuses me because I'm like, where would I want to
Mm.
sell, on Namecheap or on Spaceship? And then we got these Web3 companies that are offering platforms. Listen, before you get back to you, Josh,
Yeah.
we're going to be here for
I
15
don't
more
think you want to
minutes.
sell on. I
Yeah.
don't think you want to sell your names on Namecheap, huh? It's probably not the best brand for selling names.
Yeah,
But
but all the auctions there don't show a reserve. So are all of them no reserve? Do you know?
yeah, I believe all of the names running through the Namecheap market are no reserve. Yeah.
That's interesting. So we're going to be here for till the top of the hour. So anybody wants to know, we've been going for 2 hours. We normally, as we say, 90 minutes to 2 hours. We've been mostly going, Josh and I, when we do these um, rooms, and we're going to do another space, but he and I are going to talk about it. Maybe we'll come up with one of these same time each week if we can, only because then everybody will know and you don't have to be so aware. But anyway, we really appreciate
I think
everybody
like
being here. Yeah.
audience participation is like a big thing as well, right? It's, you know, I don't. It's not as, you know, I like talking to Todd. Todd's a cool dude, but it's a lot funner when you get uh people from the audience come up and talk and ask questions and talk about their experiences and their point of view. Um, I think that it creates a more engaged environment.
Yeah, we got all the right people here too. So I know some days are better than others. And what I mean is sometimes when we're doing this, broadcast, but geez, so many. I see Oswin here. I just like shouting people out so they think, why do you say me? But definitely
Mm.
Adam and Ish. I mean, Paul, King Sing, we used to do a room together and we plan on, him and Chad plan on doing some rooms again, but there's just not all the time in the day. And I thought this to me is almost polar opposite than my law room, even though next week on the law show on Tuesday, we got Sten Lillestrom. You got to be there if you're a domain investor. But this I really like because I can just bounce all over the place. We didn't even cover so many things today, Josh, because I still want to get into, well, I guess we can talk about it right now a little bit and then more next week, is with DNX, you were going to use, and I'm not trying to promote your thing. Of course, we want to. People want to know what you're working on, but I wanted to know a little bit, one, about you as a builder, but then also what are you doing with AI with regards to DNX? Because we talked about that, that appraisal service that's really using AI to help appraise the domain names. Tell me a little bit before we close up today about you as a builder. How long have you built stuff, and um, incorporating AI into DNX?
Yeah, so like just to preface, like me as a builder is I have ideas, I like I have visions, and then I work with partners and other people on my team to get them built. I'm not an engineer myself, but I have plenty of subpar ideas that that I do want to be built. On the AI side of things, there's a couple of things that we're doing. One of which is providing like uh, providing value ranges on like a on more of a like scoring type basis. So scoring various attributes of a domain like out of 10. It could be like length, it could be marketability, etc., etc. And then giving a like a fair market value range. Uh, so guess some of you guys are not going to love it. Others others might. Um, and then we're also introducing AI into another area of DNX that I have not talked about yet, and is kind of in stealth. But it doesn't involve the market. It's more of a uh, tool for actually for builders. Um, so um, yeah, I don't want to reveal too much on it yet, just because uh, it's a little bit. I, d- I don't normally say this word because I'm normally extremely transparent, but like some of the stuff that we're building is quite confidential, and nobody really knows about it. So I want to keep it that way for now, but all in good time.
It's tough for me to get off mute sometime. Hey, I wanted to mention today there's an LA meetup, D3 sponsoring it. If you want to know more about it, I know, well, one thing you can do is just go to Braden Pollock's uh, X account and you'll see they would like for a sign up. I'm not going to be able to make it today, but it's downtown Los Angeles. Going to have a cool meeting at D3's office. That's Fred's company. And they're going to have a meeting, and then afterwards, sounds like they're going to have some cocktails. But I know several people from LA are going to be there, and it's cool. We have some pretty cool LA meetups. Josh, do you have any? There's a lot of people in Florida. I know you're in the north area of it, but down in southern Florida, geez, so many domain investors. Do you
Mm.
any Florida meetups?
I've met a couple of friends in Florida. I live very close to JT, as most people know. JT from Media Options and Domain Sherpa. Um, he literally helped me find my house when I moved here. So I see him a lot, and there's a I've got a friend in the Orlando area, who's a pretty successful domain investor. Yeah, the short answer is yes. I saw that the NamesCon uh, I saw that NamesCon is in the space, and I'll be going down to Miami in November for NamesCon. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, there are loads of domain investors here, and they're constantly doing meetups. And if I can attend, I will.
Yeah, I mean, I look forward to NamesCon too. I look forward to. I haven't been to Miami in a while. My nephew just moved back to New Smyrna Beach near my brother who lives there, just south of Daytona. I'm sure you know it, Josh. But yeah, I haven't been to Florida in quite a while. This is going to be a big NamesCon this year, November 5th and 6th, um, in Miami. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Check out namescon.com for more information. But I'm going to be there. I know Josh is going to be there. This is going to be the biggest turnout. I think a lot of people are looking forward to something outside of Austin, basically just a new place. But anyways, cool. So we got Jason Franklin. Hey, Jason, what's up? You got this TexasTown.com that he tries to promote. But what's happening, Jason? Tell us what's up with you.
Hey, what's up, Todd? What's up, Josh and everyone? Great session you guys are having, and I appreciate these. I'm sitting here working and listening in, and that's why you guys were talking. I heard you call my name out earlier, but I didn't join at the time. But everything's good, man. Just in Texas, hanging out, and yeah, I met you at the first time at the NamesCon in Austin, Todd. So that was really cool, and yeah, just wanted to hop up here and say hello to everyone and say hi to you guys, and thank you for hosting and providing some great content for everyone to listen to.
Cool. Thanks, Jason, for saying that. And thanks for being here. And I know when you have time in the future, like I said, try to pick a same time each week so you guys know. And I think this is a pretty good time. And I was going to talk with Josh about my ideas for making it real easy too, having a, a website where people can and maybe see some of the topics we're going to touch on, just so it really organizes me. But Jason, I look forward to hearing, as a builder, just all the stuff. I love not speaking to folks for months at a time, because then you say, here's what I've been spending my time on. Here's how I've been utilizing these AI tools in this past year. And Jason is a builder, so I look forward to hearing, some tools that you can share, of what's been working for you, what hasn't, and really just what's going on with domain investing, because we're going to be talking about domain investing all through the summer. Hopefully, at least Josh and I can bust our asses, add a lot of value, some content before NamesCon, and then we'll see how it goes after that, because that's November 5th and 6th, like we said. Hope to see a lot of people there. We might as well just go the next 3 minutes so we can say we went to the top of the hour. But Josh, you bought nomoremeds.com. And did you buy that just as a gut? You say you don't buy with gut, but why did you pick it up? I mean, No More Meds. Did you see a little promise in it, or how did you select that one?
Yeah. I guess it has a lot to do with the content that I consume on a daily basis regarding health. And I think that for a lot of people, they're realizing that the healthcare, the institution that is healthcare, is uh, perhaps less than ideal in a lot of ways. And doctors are quick to put you on medication as opposed to teaching you how to live healthy lifestyles. And I think that once you get put on, various medications, it's a downward spiral from there. And I think that there are lots of prominent figures in the world at the moment that are, quite outspoken in regards to, limiting or, reducing the amount of medication that is being consumed as a society. And in this case, it's less of a bet on, use in commerce, and more of a bet on use in culture. And it's also, a $50 domain that I picked up in closeouts. So
Yeah, I was gonna say that I haven't bought in a while, since last November, September, October, but I've been buying a little bit in the last few days, and that was on my short list. But I'm the cheap domainer, so I was
yeah,
waiting for it to drop a little bit
you were
more.
waiting for it to drop. Yeah, you were just unlucky that I was browsing closeouts, because I
It's
don't.
all good. Like that's the thing, right? When you're playing and building a portfolio, it's a volume game. I can miss one or two, but as long as I catch, a handful of them at that range, at that price point, I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like a lot of the stuff, if you're buying like kind of like call to action names or like phrases like that, you're not gonna necessarily see like companies like using those names. Like that's not the kind of data that I'm looking for at that point. It's more about use in culture. Like, is that something that you would hear people say? Is it relevant to a trending topic? And I think no more meds is definitely relevant today and in
I
today's
love
culture.
I love phrase domains, especially if they have like, again, business value. You're talking health, that's freaking awesome. I sold a domain, was it last week? I'm not sure. Yeah, I'll say it, whatever. It's getmylowrate.com, right? Because it's finance, like stuff like that where it makes sense. Whereas a business sort of there's financial pressure or clout behind it. It makes sense, and domains sell because they help people brand their business, right? And if it's a memorable phrase, it's just as good, if not better, sometimes in a two-word combination,
Or my
random two
fingers.
words that people won't necessarily remember. So, it's all about memorability and branding.
That's right.
Josh, quickly, I think we're seeing more companies try to tap into culture, and we see these goofy commercials where they have long, uh, basically they use these sort of slogans or these taglines. So I can certainly see no more meds. I was laughing when you were talking about it because remember it was Tom Cruise. He started it off way back in the day. He told Matt Lauer on the, "You're so glib, Matt. You're so glib." Basically, don't give these kids fucking whatever. It wasn't Robitussin. It was like a roofie or it was some psychology drug. But anyway, I just love. You're right. I mean, it's taken a long time to stick, but people know. I think it's a cool no more meds. Um, for that price is definitely a cool one to have, I guess. So I'm finishing up. All right, hey everybody, it's been great to have you here. Josh, what did you finally want to say? Go ahead.
No, nothing, man. I thanks, Todd, for coming up and uh, and making this space run smoothly. Appreciate Jeff. Appreciate your participation, man. Appreciate John, Arif, Jason, and all you guys listening. You're all welcome to come up and chat. Would love to hear from you next time, and appreciate you guys joining the space.
Thanks, Josh. We're just getting going. You know that too. I mean, this is going to be fun. I mean, in the weeks ahead, and like I said, I had tons of topics on here that we didn't even get to because um, John wanted to argue at the beginning. Just kidding, John. I think it was great, and I think it was a fantastic conversation. I'm glad we talked about. It's not going to be the last time we talk about market value of domains and how to price them. That's some of the main things that as domain investors we want to discuss. So everybody, thanks for being here. Check out our timelines. You'll see when we're going to be here next week because we're going to do it. Thanks again, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.